if you are following the NHL draft, you probably know that there is a combine of sorts, an event being held by Gold Star Sports Agency, which is run by Dan Milstein. He has a lot of Russian clients, and among them is Ivan Demidov. And so we've talked about Ivan Demidov. He's number 3 on the FloHockey draft list. He is certainly one of the premier talents of this class, but there's a lot of mystery and intrigue. And we talked last week about the fact that there are teams that just aren't certain about certain things with him in terms of his NHL timeline. Maybe they're a little concerned about the skating. They're concerned about an ongoing injury that he's rehabbing right now. So we're getting some answers at least. And again, you take things with a grain of salt. Things can change quickly, but Ivan Demidov is under contract for one more season with SKA St. Petersburg. So one of the biggest clubs in the KHL. It's a place where he's been for the last few years and didn't get a chance to play anywhere else. He didn't play in the KHL very much. He played mostly in the MHL last season and dominated that league as we expected him to do. He obviously has voiced his displeasure with that, but he's only under contract for 1 year. And probably the most important thing that came out of the combine or this event that Milstein is holding in Florida, a number of NHL teams are there. A number of teams are going to meet with Demidov and also get a chance to speak with him for the first time for many of them. The most important piece of information that came out of this is Demidov is insistent that he will not sign an extension beyond next season. So he is already under contract for next season in the KHL. It's up to SKA St. Petersburg if they want to have him on their KHL roster or put him in the MHL. I think if this is going to be his last year on his contract, it probably behooves them to put him in the KHL, although it's not their job to develop a player for the NHL. It's their job to win hockey games. I still think he probably should have played a lot more games for them last season as well, just because of the quality of the player. But either way, he's insistent that he's not going to sign an extension. That's good news. I think there's been a lot of concern that I've heard from NHL personnel that said, what happens if there's enough pressure on him to sign an extension? What if there's certain promises made? What if the financial compensation is too much? Demidov is insistent he wants to come to North America. That is a very important thing. And I think it's important for NHL teams to hear that from the player himself, not through an intermediary, but to hear from the player himself. And that is the line that has been presented at that event. The other thing is that Demidov is injured. So there is an on-ice component to this event. And among the other Gold Star clients, Artem Levshinov, Igor Chernyshov, Zane Perek, Eric Smatejko. So there's a number of players with a number of different nationalities. But obviously, I think that the guy that everybody is focused on is Demidov because teams haven't had a chance to see him live. So Demidov is not skating at this event. He apparently, according to Sean Shapiro from Elite Prospects, talked to him. I read his article on EP Rinkside, and Demidov said he will be back on the ice in about 2 weeks. The other thing, we don't have full measurements for Ivan Demidov like we got at the Combine. He wasn't invited to the Combine, so we didn't have any measurements. It turns out he was actually in the United States. He would have been able to go, but he wasn't invited. So anyway, that aside, Demidov looks like he's above 5'11", probably between 5'11" and 6 foot right now. It's all estimated because we don't have I'm not down there. And if I was down there, I probably would have brought a tape measure with me, although that would have been a little bit weird, but I would have done it anyway. But we had been hearing that Demidov is actually bigger than he was listed. I believe he's listed at 5'10" by SKA, and he is decisively bigger than that. He's a strong kid. We already knew that about him. He's got a high compete level, but he's, continuing to rehab this injury. So those are two very important factors is that, okay, well, we got a little bit of a size idea on him. We got an idea of his what he's doing with his rehab. We have an idea what he's doing with his contract. The other thing too is with Demidov, that whole size component and everything else, the other teams that have been talking, and I've been hearing this feedback from Florida as well, is that, nobody really knew how much English Demidov could speak. It turns out he's learning and has been learning and is doing pretty well. He is supposed to go meet with teams. I know that the Chicago Blackhawks are believed to have scheduled a dinner with him while they're in Florida. So everybody is doing their due diligence. Does this materially change things for how the top of the draft is going to shake out? I don't necessarily know that. it's been very difficult to figure out which of the top 5 teams are really keen on Demidov, or if he could have that draft day tumble that we saw Matvei Michkov have last season. My belief is that we'll see Demidov probably go within that top 5, but it's still unclear who's there. The Anaheim Ducks do have a contingent there. I haven't gotten a full attendance report in terms of which NHL teams are there, but I do know Chicago, Anaheim, Calgary were among teams that were there. And I think that Calgary component also matters because Zane Parekh is a player that's going to be right in their range at number 9, probably more so than Demidov. So that'll be an interesting dynamic to check there.